We've all heard all types of stories of match fixing, like the 2005 German football scandal, the 1992 to 1993 French football bribery scandal, the 2007 NBA betting scandal, the famous 2009 European football match fixing scandal, and many others. But none of those come close to the 2002 FIFA World Cup. Long ago, when the British Navy wasn't busy colonizing half the planet, they were apparently kicking a ball around and shouting at each other like they'd just seen a ghost. The Koreans, ever curious, were fascinated. This whole football thing seemed interesting, and before long, they were hooked. But by the time the World Cup became the ultimate football battleground, South Korea was a bit tied up, literally. They were under Japanese rule, and rooting for Japan wasn't exactly something that filled their hearts with joy. Imagine being forced to cheer for the team that's been giving you a wedgie for years. When World War II ended and the US decided to drop 2 atomic bombs on Japan, South Korea saw their chance. They took the backdoor exit and reclaimed their independence. Less than a decade later, they were already trying to make it to the World Cup. They fought through qualification like a bunch of underdogs in a feel-good sports movie. And guess who they had to beat to get to the big stage? Yep, Japan. Talk about poetic justice. South Korea absolutely trashed Japan with a 7-3 aggregate score. The South Koreans were on top of the world, or so they thought. Their first ever World Cup appearance didn't exactly go as planned. They scored 0 goals, conceded 15, and about 3,000 people showed up to watch their match. For context, 60,000 fans were watching West Germany play Hungary that same day. But hey, they had spirit, right? Surely they'd come back stronger, and they did. It only took them 32 years to qualify again. Fast forward to 1986. South Korea finally made it back to the World Cup, and the gods of football decided to throw them straight into the lion's den. Their first match was against none other than Diego Maradona, who was so good at football that he made the sport look like a magic trick. Unsurprisingly, South Korea didn't win. In fact, they didn't win any matches that year. By 1998, things were getting desperate. South Korea breezed through the World Cup qualifiers like they were taking a casual stroll in the park. But when they got to the main event, they got smacked around so hard that they didn't even wait for the group stage to end before firing their manager. This was rock bottom, and South Korea had had enough. They decided it was time to win the World Cup by any means necessary. They were done being the nice guys. Before we continue, a quick ad break. A little while back, before I even started this channel, there was one skill I knew I had to learn if I wanted to create videos like the one you're watching now: video editing. I spent 4 whole years mastering this skill, and little did I know how much it would help me make videos like this for an awesome audience like you guys. Recently, I opened an Upwork account. Many of you may already know about Upwork, but for those who don't, Upwork is a platform that connects clients and freelancers for various projects. So, if you're thinking about starting a YouTube channel, or you already have one but need help with editing, now's a good time to let you know. I can help. I'll drop a link to my Upwork profile in the video description below. If you want to create high quality videos but don't have the editing skills, hit me up there and we can discuss your project. Now, with that said, let's get back to the video. The first step: hire a top-class coach. Enter Gus Hiddink, the Dutchman who had just coached the Netherlands to a 5-0 victory over South Korea. But even Hiddink couldn't perform miracles without a little help. And by help, I mean South Korea's decision to basically infiltrate FIFA, buy off referees, and, oh yeah, steal the World Cup bidding. If you're going to rig a World Cup, you might as well do it in your own backyard. South Korea decided to partner with none other than Japan, their former sworn enemy, to co-host the World Cup. It was like Batman teaming up with the Joker to plan a surprise birthday party. This was a big deal because not only had the World Cup never been hosted in Asia, but no one had ever thought to co-host it in 2 countries. Naturally, the idea was met with skepticism. Some people couldn't wrap their heads around the idea of the World Cup being played in 2 countries. Others thought Japan hosting the tournament without ever having qualified for it was like letting someone drive without a license. Then there was the whole "there's an entire sea between us" issue, which posed a logistical nightmare. And let's not forget the time zones. European fans would have to watch the games in the morning. Despite the controversy, the joint bid from South Korea and Japan won. Suspiciously. I mean, FIFA decided the winner through acclamation, which is a fancy word for whoever shouts the loudest. No ballots, no voting, just a bunch of people yelling, and suddenly South Korea and Japan were hosting the World Cup. Nothing fishy there except for the fact that FIFA's vice president at the time was also the president of the Korean Football Association. I'll let you draw your own conclusions. After spending $4.7 billion on the tournament, South Korea was ready to shock the world. And shock the world they did, starting with a 2-0 win over Poland. It was surprising, sure, but not enough to raise any red flags. Then came a 1-1 draw against the United States. There was an odd penalty, a few players hit the deck, and conveniently, there weren't any good camera angles of the incident. But hey, stuff happens, right? South Korea was now sitting on 4 points. All they needed to do was beat Portugal to advance to the knockout stage. Easy, right? Wrong. Portugal's squad was stacked with stars like Rui Costa, Vitor Baía, and Luis Figo, who was in his prime. It was the dawn of Portugal's golden generation, and they needed the win just as much as South Korea did. The odds were stacked against the Koreans, or so everyone thought. Then the match happened. 2 red cards for Portugal, and a 21-year-old Ji-sung Park scored the only goal of the game. Sure, the fouls were there, but it was a rough game all around. Both teams were as subtle as a sledgehammer, but somehow, Portugal ended up on the wrong side of the referee's whistle more often than not. It was strange, but the world moved on. That is until the last 16th match against Italy when all hell broke loose. Byron Moreno, an Ecuadorian referee. Since 1996, Moreno had been on FIFA's radar, but not always for the right reasons. In his home country, he was notorious for being involved in shady local politics and even shadier refereeing. Once he added 13 minutes to a match, allowing a team to stage a miraculous 2-goal comeback, all in injury time. If there was ever a referee with a questionable past, it was this guy. So naturally, FIFA decided to let him referee South Korea's match against Italy. What could possibly go wrong? 5 minutes into the match, and Moreno was already pointing to the penalty spot. Oddly enough, once again, there were no good camera angles of the supposed foul. The Italians looked like they'd just seen a ghost, and you could tell by their faces that they didn't agree with the call. Fortunately for Italy, Buffon picked the right side, and the penalty was saved, but that was just the beginning of what would go down as one of the most controversial matches in World Cup history. South Korea played like they were auditioning for a role in a martial arts movie, and yet they hardly got booked. Tomasi was tripped when he was through on goal. Nothing. Del Piero got rugby tackled in the penalty area. Nothing. Maldini took a boot to the head. Still nothing. Players were left bleeding on the pitch, but Moreno didn't seem to care. The match ended in a 1-1 draw, which meant it would be decided by a golden goal. Whoever scored next would win, and Moreno decided it was time to take things to the next level. Totti went into the box, got tripped, and surely everyone thought it was a penalty. But no, Moreno called a free kick for South Korea and accused Totti of diving. To make matters worse, he handed Totti his second yellow card of the match, sending him off. And where was Moreno when he made this call? 40 yards away. You can't make this stuff up. Later on, Tomasi was through on goal, dribbled past the keeper, and just as he was about to send Italy into the next round, the whistle blew. Offside. Except, surprise, he wasn't offside. To cap it all off, South Korea scored the golden goal and the match was over. The Italians weren't just upset, they were livid. Back home, things went off the rails. Italian Minister Franco Frattini claimed that Italy had been robbed and accused FIFA of rigging the match to keep South Korea in the tournament. Italian media declared Moreno public enemy number 1, with former national team coach Cesare Maldini calling him a criminal. One outlet even published his email and phone number, which, as you can imagine, didn't lead to any friendly messages. Italian fans sent so many threats to Moreno and his family that he had to change his identity and go into hiding. Then the death threats started coming in, and that's when things got even more serious. Despite all the drama, South Korea advanced to the quarterfinals, where they faced Spain. Spain had 2 goals disallowed, both for questionable reasons, and one Spanish player was even seen arguing with the referee, screaming that there was no offside. South Korea went on to win on penalties, and the world began to wonder if this was a football tournament or some kind of elaborate prank. In the semifinals, they faced Germany. Even with all their trickery and supposed referee favoritism, they couldn't overcome the German machine. Germany won 1-0, and South Korea's World Cup dream was over. Their fairy tale run had come to an end. Back in Ecuador, Byron Moreno's life was falling apart. After the World Cup, he was suspended from refereeing for 20 matches, although he didn't serve the full suspension. Instead, he returned to Ecuadorian football, where he continued his antics. In 2010, he was caught trying to smuggle 6 kilograms of heroin into the United States. The drugs were hidden in his underwear and bodysuit. He was sentenced to 30 months in prison, ending his career and freedom for good.